Sealed court documents related to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been released. Here are 5 things we've learned. Welcome back to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. More updates in the insane saga of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his best friend, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Hundreds of documents and transcripts were released just hours ago after a judge unsealed the records from a civil defamation lawsuit against Maxwell in 2015. The documents detailed new information about sexual abuse claims against her and the former financier, which earlier this month she pleaded not guilty to being a part of.
Ghislaine Maxwell is now in jail awaiting trial in a criminal case. She's been charged with several crimes related to sex trafficking. The court documents, though, are from a civil trial from several years ago. That case involved Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's sex trafficking victims. She sued Maxwell for defamation. The case was settled, and the documents were kept sealed, at least until now. Manhattan U.S. District Judge Loretta Preska ordered the documents unsealed last Thursday. There were some exceptions, though, like Maxwell's own deposition in the civil trial, which remains sealed as of this recording. Maxwell's lawyers filed an emergency appeal to stop her deposition from being unsealed. Their argument was that making her deposition public could make it difficult, if not impossible, to find an impartial jury for her criminal trial. As if everyone and their brother didn't already have an opinion about Maxwell and Epstein. As for Maxwell's attempts to stop the court from releasing documents, Judge Preska said she was troubled, but not surprised that Miss Maxwell has yet again sought to muddy the waters as the clock ticks closer to midnight. Muddy the waters? This whole case is already a giant swamp filled with muddied waters, including the questions over Epstein's suicide. And all of the other weird things too. Like the case of New Jersey U.S. District Court Judge Esther Salas. She was assigned to a separate lawsuit involving Deutsche Bank and Jeffrey Epstein. 4 days later, someone came to her home and started shooting. She was unharmed, but her son was killed and her husband wounded. Well, the FBI has a primary suspect, an attorney named Roy Den Hollander. But we really won't know much more because, like Epstein, Den Hollander committed suicide. Den Hollander had a case in front of Judge Salas and had complained about her in his self-published autobiography. Inside the car he killed himself in, police also found a list of possible other targets. And the media wants you to know he was a misogynist and a lunatic. I don't recommend reading his autobiography. It's not very good. Now, it is entirely possible Den Hollander was just an angry psychopath, and his attempts to kill a judge working on a case involving Epstein was purely a coincidence. But when you're talking about a guy who allegedly ran an underage sex trafficking ring for some of the most powerful people in the world, and then died under extremely suspicious circumstances, people are going to get a little conspiratorial, to put it mildly. Which is why these unsealed documents involving Maxwell and Epstein are such a big deal. And get this was just the first round of 3. So, what have we learned from the first round of unsealed documents? Here are 5 major takeaways. Number 5, Maxwell lied about being in touch with Epstein. Earlier this month, Maxwell's lawyers said she had no contact with Epstein in over a decade. Well, not according to the unsealed documents. There was actually a bunch of emails between the two of them, with a lot of typos. In one email following the 2015 civil lawsuit, Epstein told Maxwell, "You have done nothing wrong, and I would urge you to start acting like it. Go outside, head high, not as an escaping convict. Go to parties. Deal with it." If only he had asked Clippy for help. Number 4. There was something fishy on Epstein's island, other than fish. Epstein owned a private island that was at the center of many many conspiracy theories. Didn't help that it had this weird temple on it, which raises the question, if you were a multimillionaire with a private island, couldn't you hire someone to make your weird sex temple less tacky? It looks like part of a motel in Las Vegas, or possibly Reno. Anyway, terrible architecture aside, according to the unsealed documents, Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre said there were constant parties with young girls on the island. Giuffre said, "There's just a blur of so many girls. There were blondes, there were brunettes, there were redheads. They were all beautiful girls. I would say the ages ranged between 15 and 21. And according to Giuffre, they weren't volunteers. I don't believe that any of the girls involved were truly willing participants doing it out of their own wanting." Number 3, Maxwell was not just an observer. Ghislaine Maxwell has been accused of recruiting young girls for Epstein, but according to Giuffre's unsealed statements, Maxwell herself also took part in the abuse. Giuffre said Maxwell was the one who abused me on a regular basis. She's the one that procured me, told me what to do, trained me as a sex slave, abused me physically, abused me mentally. She's the one who I believe, in my heart of hearts, deserves to come forward and have justice happen to her more than anybody. Being a woman, it's disgusting. There are some other details that I won't go into here. This is a family-friendly show about sex offenders. Now, this information isn't totally new, because part of the criminal charges Maxwell is facing involves her participation in the abuse of these young girls. But it's not helpful to her case. Number 2, lots of powerful men were named. Giuffre was asked to name names. Some of the people she said Epstein forced her to have sex with were Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, who at one point was Epstein's lawyer, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, New York hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin, artificial intelligence pioneer Marvin Minsky, and former model agency manager Jean-Luc Brunel. She also mentioned former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, an unnamed prince, an owner of a large hotel chain, and a president of some Spanish-speaking country. There were also men mentioned in the deposition whose names were still redacted in the document released, like whoever these men are. Now, to be clear, those names, or lack thereof, are from Giuffre's deposition. Just because Giuffre said those people were involved doesn't prove they were. None of them have been charged with a crime. Even Prince Andrew, photographed here with Giuffre and Maxwell. Though U.S. prosecutors say Prince Andrew has provided zero cooperation with the investigation. I wonder why. And now, number 1. Bill Clinton may have been on Epstein's island. In this unsealed document, Giuffre said she, Maxwell, 2 young girls, and former President Bill Clinton were on Epstein's private island. She said, "You know, I remember asking Jeffrey a 'what's Bill Clinton doing here' kind of thing, and he laughed it off and said, well, he owes me a favor. He never told me what favors they were. I never knew. I didn't know if he was serious. It was just a joke." But again, that's just Giuffre saying that in her testimony. Bill Clinton has not been charged with any wrongdoing. And after these documents were unsealed, Clinton's lawyers told Newsweek he has never been to Epstein's island, which is what his lawyers said in a 2019 statement as well. In that statement, his lawyers also said in 2002 and 2003, President Clinton took a total of 4 trips on Jeffrey Epstein's airplane. And those trips were detailed by the Secret Service, which is true, but also not the full story. Because what about before 2002? Or after 2003? Well, fortunately, the Federal Aviation Administration requires flight logs to be kept. It turns out Clinton made at least 26 trips aboard Epstein's plane, and according to Fox News, even apparently ditching his Secret Service detail for at least 5 of the flights. And all that raises an important question. Did Bill Clinton actually travel to Epstein's private island? And if so, what did he think of the weird sex temple? Did he like the architecture? But I can understand why Clinton or anyone else would want to distance themselves as much as possible from Epstein. So those are just 5 things we've learned from the unsealed court documents so far. And if Maxwell's criminal trial is held as scheduled in July 2021, we may learn a thing or two more, assuming she doesn't commit suicide. Now, I want to just give a big shout out to all of you who make this show possible by supporting us on Patreon. I'm kind of expecting YouTube to instantly demonetize this episode. And for as little as $1 an episode, you can help us keep the show going. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered to learn more. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.